Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. You caught us having another little to-do there, talking about, of all things, we like to find random things to kind of disagree about. And today's random disagreement that has nothing to do with us is the starting salary of TransLink bus drivers. Well, as you saw last week, we are back in Northern Ireland. We promised you a little update video on some of our tips and highlights from our 3 months travelling up and down the Wild Atlantic Way. So that's what I thought, or that's what we thought. Sorry, not just I. We thought. Anyway, so we're going to jump in the back of the van, make ourselves a coffee. If you're thinking of visiting the Wild Atlantic Way in 2023, then hopefully some of these tips will help. Comments below. Starting salary for a TransLink bus driver? Please bet now. But I think we're ready. We've got our coffee.
I'm not sure I've got my brain.
No, somebody may be a bit quiet on this one. She's just informed me that, let me just zoom us in a little bit. There we go. That she's going to let me take the lead. That never happens. And she'll just chip in from time to time. Anyway, tips on travelling on the Wild Atlantic Way. Tip number 1, go do it. Stop watching this video. Well, maybe wait till the end. Stop watching this video and go plan your own trip. It was fantastic. We've lived in Ireland now, in fact, coming up to our 7-year anniversary of living in Northern Ireland. And apart from the odd foray across to Donegal, we've not done a lot of the west coast of Ireland. And I think we mentioned in a lot of our videos, we're really sorry that we didn't do it sooner. It was fantastic. And of course, a lot of folks who are travelling long term in their van and they have to abide by the Schengen rules. A lot of people will head off into, well, previously into Croatia, into a place like Turkey, maybe down into, I was going to say Cambodia, not Cambodia, down into Morocco. Now, of course, with the change of the whole Schengen thing with Croatia, all of a sudden those folks maybe are going to be a bit limited. And yes, you have to sort of maybe pay to get back across into Ireland by a ferry or something. But spending your 90 days in the Republic of Ireland, travelling on the west coast of Ireland, well, I reckon that's not a bad little thing to do. So yeah, number 1 tip, just go ahead and book it and do it. Now, the one thing to bear in mind is you'll look at a map and you'll see 1,600 miles of the Wild Atlantic Way, but be mindful that a lot of that, especially if you stick right on the Wild Atlantic Way, is going to be on smaller and single track roads. So of course that's going to increase the time that you're going to be driving. On top of that, you will be stopping quite a lot to take pictures, get out and explore, because you may have a destination in mind for the end of the day, but you'll pass 5 or 6 different viewpoints that you just want to stop and
I was constantly shouting, stop, 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 because there'd be another
Do you remember her
view.
shouting, castle? Yeah.
It's not that many castles, I don't think, from what I remember.
She found one though.
I did find one, yeah. But you will, no matter what beautiful scenery you've seen before, you will still be amazed by what you find. Another thing, actually, I've just thought of, if you want to get to places quicker, you can take the N roads and just go from place to place rather than following the actual war signs. And this might also be preferable if you're driving a really big motorhome and you're not confident with it, because some of the roads can be a little bit hairy. Personally
speaking, I think the Wild Atlantic Way has a huge amount more going for it than the NC 500, but one of those is the fact that you do have alternative routes to get between the main viewpoints. So if you were on a real tight schedule, I know some people maybe only have a couple of weeks, you could still drop in to a number of the highlights by using the N roads. I think we would say if you wanted to do it real justice from the north right down to the south,
I would say 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks.
Leisurely, that would be leisurely.
Yeah. Just, or do it over maybe a couple of different visits, pick a couple of areas. The Wild Atlantic Way website sort of splits down a lot of the areas and maybe do it over a couple of different visits. But those N roads really do help to shorten the time taken when driving. We did do, just briefly, a lot of our travelling in August, which you'd expect to be prime time, and actually the roads were fairly quiet and we didn't meet that many vans. So don't worry that there's going to be van after van. It's certainly not as busy as what we find. Yes, in some of the hot spots, and maybe whenever you get down to places like the Ring of Kerry, generally it's nowhere near as busy as the NC 500. We never once, I think, found ourselves in a campervan stroke motorhome convoy, which is one of our pet peeves. So in our whole 8 weeks of travelling, we didn't use a single campsite. And we actually found park-ups to be relatively easy to come by. You will come across, obviously, a few no overnight parking signs in some locations, especially in the more built-up areas. But we generally find the locals to be very accommodating to vans. And in fact, in some locations, Bundoran being one place, we parked up and there were a whole bunch of vans there as well. So the locals seem to be, now of course this isn't, it's not 100% the case, but generally the locals were very
we had no
accommodating
issues,
from that
no
perspective.
issues.
Now the one thing that our first part of the trip was, we were obviously travelling in high season, and what we found was that on a lot of the beaches there were actually public temporary toilets set up, really clean.
Yeah, they were
public
really
toilets.
well. We saw people servicing them, actually.
Yeah.
It was very good. Yeah.
And so that made the lack of emptying services, I think there's probably about 3 sort of campervan service points on the whole of the Wild Atlantic Way. That made sort of going to the bathroom a little bit easier. What I found, however, when I went back down, I think I commented on this on one of my vlogs, when I went back down again in October, all of these temporary toilets had been removed, and in fact, in a number of places, Achill Island being one, even the permanent public toilets were also closed as well. So just bear in mind that if you are travelling out of season, the lack of emptying facilities and the lack of public toilets may be a bit of an issue.
We did even find actually in one of the towns there was no public toilets, and I asked a local and actually laughed when I asked if there were any.
Is that because you were peeing yourself at that point?
So look out for tourist office, because you could use the toilets in the tourist office. So that's one thing. Otherwise you would actually have to go into a cafe, and unfortunately a lot of them said for customers only.
Yeah.
So you might need to buy a coffee or a cake or something.
So
that'd be a hardship.
So hopefully at some point we start to see a few more campervan service points opening up on the Wild Atlantic Way, because it certainly is needed. And just quite quickly, even though we didn't stay in any campsites, I would say that for 2 persons in a sort of campervan like ours, it was about €30 a night. Now some were much more expensive, but I think if you budget for about €30 a night, you're probably okay for campsites. So keeping on the topic of services, bins and emptying your rubbish. Now, this was something that we talked about quite a lot. The lack of bins, or not necessarily the lack of bins on the Wild Atlantic Way, but the fact that they've all got little sort of openings like this here means it can be very difficult to empty your rubbish. And a lot of towns you'll see signs saying fines for emptying any household rubbish. Now whether someone could get you by the fact that they're calling this a house, I'm not too sure. You might have seen my little trick for putting your rubbish inside a Pringles can and then depositing that Pringles can. I think we just got very used to emptying little and often. I think if you end up putting stuff into a bin bag and it becoming too big, then it's very difficult to get rid of. In a couple of supermarkets we did see recycling points, and in a couple of car parks and things recycling points, but unfortunately very few plastic recycling points. I think I only saw, apart from the supermarket, maybe only 1 or 2. So getting rid of cans and glass, it seems to be okay. You'll struggle getting rid of your rubbish if it's in a big bag, and plastic can be very difficult to get rid of. So more plastic recycling points.
We did actually find a kind local who took our big plastic 5-litre bottles away and put them in his rubbish. So if you get friendly with somebody local, maybe ask them nicely.
I did feed him half a bottle of my whiskey, mind you.
He did,
so,
that helps. A couple of quick things on other services. Showers, very few and far between. In fact, I'm not sure we had a shower once.
Nope.
We did a couple of sea dips, which help. But I'm sure there's leisure centres you can find where you can pay and use a shower or go for a swim.
We're just dirtbags.
Here we are. Laundrettes, very, very difficult to find self-service. They're nearly all the Revolution ones that you find in car parks.
Don't use Revolution laundrettes if you want your clothes to dry.
No, if you read the small print, it's actually line dry clothes, which means they're actually still damp when you take them out the dryer, and so it's very hard to dry in the van afterwards. There are ones you can pay for, which I think would probably be about €20 for a reasonable sized bag, but we didn't bother. I hand washed bits and hung them on the line when the weather was good enough.
So from a mobile phone perspective, we're both on BT. We also carry a 3 4G dongle, and we actually found the service on the BT to be relatively okay. Just bear in mind that if you're coming across to Ireland, you will enter a roaming zone, and so just check with your provider. I think we get 50 gig each on our BT, and that was more than enough for what we were doing. Our 3 service, however, was pretty hopeless, but then again, it's pretty hopeless everywhere. So probably not a big surprise, but Aldi was certainly the cheapest place to shop. I would say on average, you're probably saving about €10 on a €50 shop. The one exception I would say is if you're looking to buy alcohol in supermarkets, it is bloomin' expensive. So for example, here in Northern Ireland, 12 Rockshore is about £10, and 8 Rockshore in Ireland is about £16. So very expensive for buying alcohol in supermarkets.
There's something else worth mentioning. If you're shopping in Tesco's and you try to use your club card, it won't be accepted, so you won't get club card prices.
And that's if you're a club card holder in the UK.
Yeah. So what we did, we generally asked the person in the queue behind us if we could borrow their club card to get the discount, and they'd then get the points. So we always got told yes, because everybody wins.
Come on, Tesco's. Why doesn't our UK card work in Ireland? Still Tesco's, isn't it?
Also, eating out, actually not overly expensive, probably on par with UK prices. But just a tip, if you like breakfast items, especially like a breakfast bap, go to Super Value. They have the most amazing selection, and you can get a whole breakfast in a roll. It was the best, and about a third of the cost of a cafe.
And I think that was our breakfast that we were having the day before we were doing the half marathon.
Yeah.
So yeah, what a way to do a half. What athletes we are. Then again, I did have several beers before the half marathon as well. So yeah. Just very quickly, if you're having a beer out, Guinness seems to be the cheapest. I would say it's about €4.70, whereas a Galway hooker or a lager could be $5. Did I just say that out loud? A Galway lady of the night, a Galway hooker or something like that, an ale could be anywhere from €5.50 to €6. So if you like Guinness, that's probably your cheapest bet for having a pint out.
So just a quick summary of the highlights, and I think for me there was like 3 areas that really stuck out. One was the time we spent in Dingle. We only intended to go for one day, in fact one afternoon. We ended up doing the Dingle half marathon, which was great.
The beer made us do it.
And also, I think we mentioned the sea safari I went on, which was a last minute thing. So you don't always need to book these things. If you go down to the office at the harbour, they show on the door the number of seats remaining for each time safari. And I managed to get on one literally about half an hour later. Well worth it. It was a geological thing. It was about the cliffs really, but we saw dolphins and seals and lots of seabirds and things, and it was really good. Well worth it. Also for me, there's a little aquarium on Achill Island, and it's kind of meant for children, but I went along because I love that sort of thing. And the guys there that run it, that they do a little talk, and it's really interesting, and I found out lots of things about sea creatures. So I'd recommend that. I think that was only €8 or something.
And you got
like
a lollipop at the end, didn't you? And a wee pat on the head.
And what else? And for me, just generally the scenery. It was stunning, and just the scenery.
So there were a couple of things that really stood out for me. Firstly, on our second weekend, we had a really fantastic time with new friends, just around a campfire. We did a bit of bodyboarding. It was a really warm day. And it's just little moments like that, aren't anything in particular, but you just have a really good weekend with new friends. Connemara, now, whenever Nicola and I went down, we obviously stuck to the coast, and the Connemara coastline is beautiful. But into the hills was also fantastic when I went back by myself. And I think Connemara as a region probably needs its own kind of, because we didn't even get up any mountains up there. Achill Island, fast becoming one of my favourite places on the Wide Atlantic Way. And of course the new film that's just been released and just won some Golden Globes actually with Colin Farrell, The Banshees of Inisherin, was filmed there as well, so I'm pretty sure it's going to be very busy next year. And then the last place we visited on the Beara Peninsula, wow, that's right on a par, I would say, with the Ring of Kerry and the Dingle Peninsula, but much less busy. I think a lot of people just sort of skip the Beara Peninsula. And again, we were rushing through it a little bit because we had some important meetings to attend. But just fantastic. But as Nicola said, so many highlights. There was the park run as well, the Bear Island park run.
I would say for me, the Dingle and Beara Peninsulas were better than the Ring of Kerry.
Yeah.
And like Nigel said, far less traffic, which made it much nicer.
Do you realise you're kind of...
That's okay, I'm happy to scoot now.
can't get in because you're a big
I was going to
jacket.
say, we haven't got any gas in the van at the moment, so
Yeah,
we're wrapped up.
We've had to bring our own flask
Yeah.
because there's no water in the van and there's no gas, so we can't make our own. So there's no heating. Anyway, guys, well, hopefully that has helped you a little bit if you were thinking of visiting the Wild Atlantic Way.
If you've got any other questions before you finish,
Mm-hmm.
leave it in the comments and Nigel will reply because I never look at anything.
That's very true. Don't ask her a question.
Don't ask me a question.
Because she
Well,
won't reply.
Nigel will ask me the question and I'll respond via Nigel.
There you go, yeah.
I have lots of other things going on. He's the social man. Oh, it's
Yeah.
not that kind of movie.
Yeah, I think she's maybe only watched up to one of our hiking videos in Spain, so that's where she is at the moment. So
To be fair, I don't like watching myself on the video, and that's the only reason. It's not that I'm not interested.
anyway, the Wild Atlantic Way is absolutely fantastic. If you haven't done it before, really, really highly recommend it. It is just beautiful, right from Donegal right the way down to Kinsale. And in fact, as we started to see in our little video as we made our way inland, it looks like the hidden heartlands, as it's called, of Ireland, along with parking up at the Waterway Ireland park-ups, would be a pretty good little adventure as well. Now, we have some pretty big plans for 2023, but we will keep those on the back burner for now and hopefully let you guys in on that in the next couple of weeks. But hopefully you've enjoyed this little tips, and if you haven't already, I'll put a playlist up of our adventures on the Wild Atlantic Way. So basically, guys, just before we go, for those of you who guessed below our little how much does a TransLink bus driver get paid, this one here, the figure that she told me, twice as much as what the official TransLink website says. I was right, she was wrong. Ha ha.
I believe everything I'm told.
You are. The guy on the train telling you what he was earning, he was probably getting paid for recruiting people to come work for TransLink.
I wanted to be a bus driver afterwards.
Exactly. Right, guys, once again, thanks a lot for following along. And until next time, and I've no idea what next time will be because we are pretty much caught right up to date. Until next time, I'm off to get her a job at TransLink.
I'm off to watch dogs on YouTube.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Why do you think it's moving?
Look, it is.
Oh,
Look.
it is moving. Oh, we must be leaning.
And she's like,
We're even arguing about whether the tripod's moving.
is the tripod moving or is the van moving? Is that recording?
It's not going well.
It's not going well. The one thing to bear in mind is, well, actually, hang on.
Well, lots of places, mountainous and lovely places. It really is beautiful and it's worth... No, stop this. Are we recording? I totally forgot what I was about to say there.
Anyway, so the Wild Atlantic Way is
Can't remember.
the Wild Atlantic,
6 to 8 weeks.
but then me as well. So it's,
Oh, no, I would say 2 months. No, it was about 2 months. So for me, I think just to sum up of highlights.
hang on, don't do that again. And I've chatting, chewing the cud, going for a bit of a run, and
Are we horses? I'm not well.
she was twice the. She basically guessed.
What?
Yes, get a sip of tea in you. That'll make everything better.
Are we back on?
Maybe not. Go on, Bennett.
No, what I wanted to say
No,
was...
no! Because I'm going to delete my bit as well now. You can see how into YouTube she is, folks.
I never watch YouTube. Unless it's a dog.